Hello and welcome to our inspired stage event today. I'm so happy that you are here. My name is Caroline, of course, and our today's guest is Andrea. It is Putting, right? Or
Yes.
we pronounce it that way. I always have to ask. I'm not sure. Now I'm sure. I'm so happy that you said yes to our event. How are you doing today?
Yeah, it's a bit early to really know how I'm doing, but I'm here and I'm ready to go. So that's the important thing.
Thank you so much. I know you are in Australia and you already have Monday. Is it true?
Yes, it is Monday. It's bright and early Monday morning.
Yeah.
I say bright. It's not bright yet. It's still very dark and
Yeah.
cold.
Oh, thank you for being here. We are in Europe. Here in Europe, we have 9 p.m. on Sunday, and we have Aaron, and Aaron has not 12 p.m. What time is it, Aaron? In Louisiana, in the US, 2 p.m. Okay, this is amazing, but let's not talk about the time. I want to introduce you to the audience, of course. You are the founder of Chocolate and Coffee for Cultural Harmony and Putting Word Self-Publishing House. You are a catalyst for transformative story sharing and an advocate for unity through storytelling. Your best-selling and award-winning books, Compassionate Prosperity and Compassionate Purpose, explore the intersection of social mission and personal meaning, while your work empowers emerging authors to achieve bestseller status. This is so amazing what you do. We had our podcast already, and now you are on stage. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Andrea Putting, the stage is yours. Take it away.
Thank you, Caroline. So, have you ever felt like life is passing you by? That you're on a continuous search for fulfillment? So you may have everything that you think you need. You may have finance, you may have a business, you may have a home, you may have all of those things, but it feels like there is something missing. Now, I think I found that we kind of encouraged on this merry-go-round of life, and we want to build out our lives and make sure that we're comfortable in it, and that all of our personal needs are met. And there is nothing wrong with that, because we do need to have a roof over our heads. We need to have employment. We need to be, or our own business, whatever it is. We need to build a certain amount of wealth and comfort for our life, and that's all fine. And but we get to this point where sometimes we feel like there's fulfillment is missing in our life, that we just keeps us on this endless treadmill, running for our lives, trying to reach that pot of gold that seems elusive, that there is always that something missing. And I'll get to some stories about that very soon. But I've found that, we're told that find our why and keep searching for our why, and that will keep us a focus. But I've found that when we go beyond the why and we focus on our compassionate purpose, we find even greater fulfillment. So I have a question to start with. It's a bit of a riddle, I guess. What is as good as sex, has no calories, and can change the world? Any thoughts on that one? Well, it's joy. Yes, what's going to get us there? What's going to bring that joy is the question. So the answer that I have is altruism. It's doing good, putting the needs of somebody else in our view and working at that. It's about doing those things that make a difference in the world. They're the things that brings us joy. And to our brain, so the research shows that altruism sets off all the same neuropathways and all the chemicals that sex does. So to our brain, being altruistic, serving other people is as good as sex. Now, I've often said to people that it's as good as sex, and they go, really? But to our brain, it is. And so, and it has that long-lasting thing. I kind of think that maybe sometimes it has a longer-lasting feel of those making us feel good. So, like I said, there is research around that. A research psychologist, Dr. George Moll, he's Brazilian, and he did research on this, and they stuck all those electrodes to the head, and they found that that was the case, that when we are thinking about giving to other people or serving other people, that it brings us an enormous amount of joy in our life. So on top of that, there's also research from another psychologist, I think he is. His name is Dr. Stephen Post, and he's an author. He's written a few books, but one called Why Good Things Happen to Good People, and he started now I've got to remember what it was called, research into the unlimited love or something along these lines. So he's done a lot of research around this, about what it is that makes us feel good and thrive. And in his research, he found that volunteers are happier, healthier, live longer lives, and have greater social connections. So it's that giving of ourselves that makes this different. And if you've seen there's a series on Netflix called The Blue Zone, if you may have seen that one, with Dan Buettner. And he's also found that in those people that live into their very old age, so some into their 100 plus, they all have this purpose for living outside of themselves. They all give to somebody else. They're all giving to their communities. They're sharing in this kind of way. So it's a really important aspect for life, for longevity, for happiness and health. So I've told you all about that. I guess I need to tell you a little bit about me, to why I've gone on this journey. So to start with, I do live in Melbourne, Australia, and this has been my home most of my life. I lived somewhere else for a little while and came back to Melbourne. And I've been married for over 40 years, and I have grown up children and a couple of grandchildren who are beautiful and keep me very busy. My 3-year-old granddaughter is into princess dresses, so she came one day with her dolls and said, "I want dresses like this, please, Grandma." How could I resist? So she's been keeping me busy with princess dresses. My 5-year-old grandson, he's all about cars and trucks and loves puddles. Puddles keep him happy. So they keep me happy and busy, along with my own stuff. And I do a bit of volunteering work. I'm a community chaplain who goes into emergency situations, and I have church work, and I have chocolate and coffee, which we'll get into. So on my journey, I have been a lot of things. I have been the at-home mum, and while my husband worked a ridiculous amount of hours to keep the family going, and when my children when they had gone to school, I went to university and I studied naturopathy. So do you know what naturopathy is? Some people do and some people don't know what I'm talking about. Naturopathy is natural medicine. So I know in America, if you're a naturopath, can call themselves a doctor. In Australia, we can't call ourselves a doctor. And so a natural medicine doctor. So I studied that, and then I went off to start my own business. Now my son was then in high school, and then internet was all shiny and new. It was late last century. It was the dinosaur era of the internet. It really was. It was we had dial-up networks, and we had to set yourself up on a website. You had to learn HTML. There was no PayPal, no Google. It was all, I had to do all that myself. So I did that, got a business going, and after about 7 years, I just sat here one day in this office and go, what am I doing? I studied 4.5 years to sit here and send packages out, basically, was what I was doing. So I'd lost my passion and purpose in that. Went off, sold the business, got a job, worked at that for a few years, and I was like, well, what am I doing? There was things going on in the business that I wasn't happy with, and they weren't connecting with my values and ethics. And I could see that a lot of people going to work each day weren't happy. I would sit on the train in the morning and everyone was dressed in black as if they were going off in mourning to their dreary old jobs. Now, while I say that, you have to live in Melbourne to understand that a lot of people wear black, and I don't. I would have had on a red coat or something, and everyone else was in black, So, but to me, it just felt like this death march into work, and it's like, well, what's going on here? And I had a wake-up call one afternoon when I was leaving work. The train station was just across the road from work, and I went across to catch the train, and the gates were closed. So we don't have gates anymore. We have them overhead. But I was standing at the train station waiting for the express train to come. And I looked up and saw it coming, and this split second hit me. I could so easy just step in front of that train. I was like this massive, whoa, what's going on? That's not me. I don't think about things like that. And I had to do a quick flash through my mind of my own purpose in life and what was important to me. And it's amazing how in a split second you can go through so many things, because at that point my children were both grown up and they were both married, and it was like, well, do they need me anymore? And I kind of thought, well, one day I'll have grandchildren. They will need me. Of course, they need me to make princess dresses. Anyway, so it was a wake-up call, and I was fortunate that I could at that point quit my job and spend time looking at what was important in life, what was important to me, and what was important to what I was doing. What was my purpose all about? So I'd been through this experience of going through seeing the effects of my husband working really hard, working 80 hours a week, and what that effect that had on the family. I'd been a business owner and lost my passion in the business. And then I'd been an employee, and I could see how that was affecting employees. You'll leave your soul at the door and then come into work, pick it up on the way home. You can't bring that stuff to work. And you get to the point you forget to pick it up, and your whole life just kind of falls. A lot of people, their life falls apart. And I'm grateful to say that not everyone has that experience, but, it's a lot of people do. And so things were going off in my head that something needs to happen here. There needs to be some changes. And my naturopathic mind went back to where I was. The very first thing I learned in those studies was to treat the cause. What is the cause of this? Why is this happening? And so I went on this search of what is it that's missing in business, in our lives, and what is my purpose? What is it that I need to be doing to make a difference in the world? And while I was looking at that, I was doing a lot of research into business and employee engagement and leadership and all sorts of things, trying to pull some pieces together. In the middle of all this, something happened. I was sitting here at my computer. Spent a lot of time sitting at this computer over the last, since I've lived here, which over 30 years now, just sitting here at this computer. And while I was sitting here, something was happening. I turned onto Facebook and there was this activity happening. What's going on? And it was the unthinkable in Australia, was that there was a hostage siege happening. A gunman walked in and took hostage a chocolate cafe. And so he took the patrons and the staff hostage, and this went on for quite some hours. I think it was over a day, overnight, and it really shook people. Now, this gunman was claiming to do this in the name of Allah. He was a Muslim, and obviously, when you think about it, he was not thinking. As it turned out, he was a known psychopath or something to the police. So, but he was claiming that he was doing this in the name of Allah, and he was waving an ISIS flag. So, in the aftermath of what happened in the conclusion of this was that the gunman and 2 innocent victims were killed. In the aftermath, we all held our breath. We didn't know what the response of people would be. So this was 10 years ago, and it was very edgy at that time about Muslims and hostages and that kind of thing. So the Muslims had been through a pretty terrible time with this kind of thing. So they were getting quite scared, and they were starting to take off their religious garb. They wouldn't want to leave home. But what happened was 150,000 people went onto social media with the hashtag I will ride with you. Now, this is basically in Sydney, where there is, what's the population, 3-4 million people and 150,000. So it's a very significant number. And so they were offering to ride the train, the bus or the ferry with Muslim people to ensure that they got to where they needed to go safely. So instead of being hate and terror, there was this outpouring of love and peace in the world. So, but this got me thinking, and this sat with me for quite some time. And I wanted to, and it's like, well, why is it that we wait until there is a tragedy before we reach out and say that we are a people of love and acceptance? Why is the majority of people silent about these things? And so my response was to start Chocolate and Coffee Day for Religious Harmony, as I called it then. And so I was just encouraging people to do that simple thing of reaching out to someone who's different to them, whether it's religious, cultural, abilities, sexual orientation, way of thinking, political way of thinking even, whatever it is, but somebody that they wouldn't normally connect with, and sharing chocolate and coffee and have a conversation. Let's share our stories with each other, because when we share our stories, it breaks down those barriers. And there's research to prove that as well. There's research that proves that if you sit with somebody for just 1 hour, all those intolerances will melt away. So this is brilliant. It's just such a simple thing that we can all do, is just to share in a chocolate and coffee with somebody. Now, I love the concept of using chocolate and coffee, because chocolate has all those feel-good endorphins and helps us to open up. It's the love chemicals that help us to open up to somebody and share with them. So it kind of opens up that, and sitting with a warm cuppa in your hands, it's that comfortable setting. It's a safe setting for people to open up and share. So I've been encouraging people to do that for 10 years. And there's a whole lot of different ways of doing it. But the simplest thing that I've encouraged people to do is just to simply reach out to someone and sharing a chocolate and coffee. So that took me on another journey, and my story gets too long, I think. But it took me on the journey of, wow, what does it mean to have a social mission? What has it meant to me? It picked me up when I was feeling down. It made me feel like I had something of purpose to give to the world. I could share something of value with the world. Now, I'm hoping that you kind of relate to that. So, because I was on this journey of what is it that's missing in business, I thought, well, what is it? What if we combined social mission with business? And so then that took me on another angle of search, and I started a podcast, the Social Mission Revolution, and I spoke to people in business and about, well, it's more than just business, but people involved in social mission, about how having a social mission had changed their life in business and in life. And I found that those in business, they found that it changed their business and changed the way they feel about business. Employees were more engaged. There was more innovation in the business and more productivity. And of course, that leads to profit. But they weren't doing it for those reasons. They were doing it because that was what was right for them, what they felt called to be doing. And so that journey then took me on. While I did that, I ended up writing 2 books. Compassionate Prosperity When Success Is Not Enough, which I wrote for business, and then Compassionate Purpose, Discovering a Life of Fulfillment, which I wrote for individuals. So I'd love to share some of those stories with you about what it means for people to be in, what it is for business to be in social mission, and what that all entails. So now I talk about social mission, and I'm kind of changing that. It's how we have a social impact in the world, what we do that is for other people, that is beyond us. Because what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing and what I'm talking to people is that when we are of service to others, that's when our life lights up. That's what gives us a greater sense of fulfillment, a greater sense of success in life. So that's what I'd love to share with you, some of these stories. Would you like to hear some of the stories of these? Okay. I have lots of stories, so I just got to think, it's kind of, I never come on exactly which stories I'm going to tell, because I just feel into that, which stories are going to be the right ones to do. Right, so I might start with one of, let's start at the beginning. Chapter 2, Creating a Legacy. So there's a story of a man called Frank McKinney. Now he is quite famous in his own right. He's an author, best-selling author. But how he started what he was doing is, he is a real estate artist. So he was making mega bucks. He was he'd be a billionaire easily. So he'd got to the top of his career. He was building and designing these luxurious homes, and I would love to be able to walk into one of them, because they look absolutely beautiful on the internet, and selling them for millions of dollars. And he got to the point where he had sold the biggest and best house that he'd ever done for millions and millions of dollars. I can't remember how much, 20 million or something. And it was, instead of being on top of the world with this, he actually got really depressed. And I was like, well, I've achieved all this. What's it about? What is what is the use of going on? I've done everything. Now, he could have done anything in the world because he had the money. He could have gone here, there, and everywhere. But he felt like he had no purpose left. And he had a coach and spoke to the coach, and a very wise coach. And he said to me, I don't know what's going on. It's like, I just feel like my life is over. And his coach said to him, you have succeeded in your professional calling. Now you need to look at your spiritual calling, your spiritual purpose. And so he thought about that, and he completely looked at how he can make a big difference in the world. What he looked at his capabilities, what he was good at, and now he builds villages in Haiti. The whole village, the homes, the church, the schools, the hospitals. But he doesn't go in there and tell them what to do. He brings the people together and gets them involved in what they need and what they want, because who is he to go in there and tell them what you need? He wanted to get them the opportunity. And so he does this work now to help do that. So he found this greater calling, and that gave him a greater sense of fulfillment. Now, I like to back that up with saying, because I know what people would say when they hear this story. This man, well, I'll go back to legacy. He's created a great legacy with that. You cannot deny. But our legacy can be anything. Because I look at my legacy, my family legacy of what's being left to me is nothing. It's nothing to do with big dollars. It's what my family have achieved. And so that's how I look at legacy. And that's how I talk about it in my books, is what is that legacy that we want to live and we want to leave. So, like I said, Frank is a billionaire. He can do that. He can do these big, amazing things. We don't all have that capacity, but we can still do amazing things. So if I keep on the business track, for another story is one of a lady, her name suddenly escapes me. Long book. It doesn't matter, does it? Her name is, I'm thinking, yes, Belle Chapman. Now, Belle is a family photographer. So she doesn't have these billions of dollars, but she's a photographer. And what's important to her is of course, family photos. And she takes families out on adventures to take photos, so that their photos of their families playing and having a good time, and captures those moments, those interactions between family members. Now, photos became important to Belle because when she was 4, her father died of cancer. So all that she had was photos. And a lot of these photos he was sick and wasn't those lovely interactive photos. So she started her social mission in adjunction to her business, where she would pro bono, so for free, she gives families who have a member of the family who's in terminal cancer, and she will take them on an adventure and take these photos where people are interacting with each other, and so that they've got the aliveness coming through in the photos, instead of there being photos where people are, in their sickbed. So they're photos that families can live with forever and cherish when their loved one has gone. So that's her social mission. So in contrast, we've got the billionaire, but this is something simple from somebody on that edge of their life, I'm sure she's nowhere near that kind of financial capacity, but it's something that she can do. And I believe there is something that we all can do. So if I then look at another example of, I'm going to go to a corporate example of a company which I know very little about because it is an American company, CBT Nuggets. And I spoke to their corporate responsibility manager, I think she is, anyway, named Shelley McGavin. And I like to talk about this because it brings up different examples. Now, she, in that capacity, she's able to, by the financial support of the company, give her time to other businesses, other social enterprises, and help them to work. And they do various things. So some of the things they do is they'll have a volunteer day. So they'll all go out and volunteer for something, and they'll do the dirty work. It's not glamorous. So that's something that any business can do, is they can have once a year, they might go out and do something like that together. And another thing they do is when they're replacing their technology with their phones, the computers, then they donate those to other organisations who don't have that. So sometimes they will go to Africa or somewhere, or to an organisation that is struggling to get going and survive. So those little things that she brought up when I spoke to her are things that we can all embrace, that we can think about on our way. So one of the other things that I was going to talk about later, but I'm going to bring this up now. One of the other ways that we can all get involved in social mission is, some of the other people that I've worked with, is that we think about our services that we pay for. Who do we engage to do that? So, for example, there's in Australia who I spoke to him on my podcast, and I quickly got involved in his business. Was I changed my phone over to his service because it's a social enterprise, and a percentage of what I pay every month goes to a charity of my choice. They have 11 or 12 charities, and you choose which one you want to support. So we can do those things in our business. We can look at those. What are the supplies we get? What are the services? Who do we support in those businesses? So that's a couple of the business ones, but I also love to talk about the personal ones that aren't necessarily about business. So I could go on and talk about other businesses ones, but best thing is to get the book and have an experience with that and go through that, because this book talks about the businesses and how and why, and gives lots of examples of some really good businesses that have got involved in social mission in some way. So, and then guide you through those processes. So some of the personal ones are some of my favourite ones, some of the people that have really touched my heart in their social missions, of what they've started and developed. And some, like the business, some of them are big and they have these grand plans that they're going to do these amazing things. And some of them are just little things. But I want to tell you about one of my favourite people. Her name is Melinda Shelley. And she started an organisation called 123 Read to Me. Now, she started very small, which is always a very good thing to start, seeing how you can go small and then building upon it. Now, she realised that people living not too far from her were living, it was quite a poverty area. And it occurred to her that when families are struggling to put food on the table, they are not buying books for their children. Books are a luxury. So she just started collecting what she calls gently loved books. So she'd get secondhand books from families, because we all have When we've had children, we have all of these books. She looked at her own child's bookshelf and goes, well, you don't need all those books anymore. We've stopped you reading those ones. We can pass them on to somebody else. So she started collecting books and providing them to families who didn't have the books. She started just taking a box of books to the fish and chip shop and saying, free books. Now, she has grown and developed this charity to giving away hundreds of thousands of books to families who cannot provide books for their children. So what she realised was that if children don't have books at home, in those preschool years especially, they go to school on the back there. They just don't have the advantage that other children have. They're really set back. And so that affects their whole way of their education long term. And her research has even shown her that those who can't read when they grow up as adults, said there is a high percentage of people in prison who have not been able to read, who have not had that normal education. And those who have books at home when they're growing up, they have a greater IQ. They have greater intelligence. It's just the way it works. Anyway, so she's on this grand mission to improve the country by making sure that children have books at home. So she collects books from everywhere now. People are just bringing their books to her. She distributes them to families, to schools who don't have libraries, to when there's tragedies, they will, such as bushfires and floods and storms, she will be sending books to these children so that they feel like they've got something. And so now it's not just in her local area, she sends them to the whole country. So that's one of my favourite stories. And because I see her growing and developing and the impact she's having. And she started that just by looking at her son's bookshelves and saying, we could give some of those books to children who don't have them. That's why it's one of my favourite stories. So other stories, some of the other things that people are doing are just incredible. And what were some of the other stories I want to share with you? There's Alex Decker during COVID. He realised that his sister, who is a doctor working in a hospital, didn't have opportunity to get meals. And so he started cooking for her, giving her food because she couldn't go out and get, because everything was closed. But she had to go to the hospital, but she needed meals. And so he started cooking for her. And then he started cooking for other people who worked in there, other doctors. And then he realised that there was a whole lot of people that needed meals. There was the homeless people who were not getting the meals that they needed. And they weren't getting the quality that they needed. And the next thing is that he finds he's making a whole lot of meals after meals after meals, and ended up starting an organisation where he now provides meals to homeless and to a lot of the organisations who need to provide meals to the homeless because they weren't getting quality meals. And so now he has nutritionally developed meals that he provides to other organisations. So these ideas come from all sorts of places. Another lady, Tina Murray, she was in Africa, and she went to into a school and said, well, what is it that you need? I want to help you. She wanted to do something positive. She was expecting them to say, we need books, we need paper, we need pens, we need this, that. She was expecting that. What they said they needed was toilets. They didn't have toilets, they didn't have running water. Now, this was especially impacting the girls as they reached puberty, because when they had their periods, they wouldn't go to school. And how would the teachers, the female teachers, operate? Because when they had to look after themselves during their periods, they would have to actually leave the school and go miles to go to find somewhere where they could take care of themselves. So severely impacting both the teachers, so that their impact, and the girls would miss out on a week of school every year and end up dropping out every week. And so then she started raising money to do toilets in Africa for schools. And so she's made a big impact with that. So there's lots of different things that people can do. And I'd like to just kind of go to the other scale to, while I talk about these things, they seem like big things, and they seem like they're hard, and sometimes they seem like they're hard. So what I like to do is to really make it simple in looking at, I'll make it simple, but one other story before I get there was of a lady who dug up her front yard and grew flowers, just grew flowers. And what she did with her flowers was that she took them to hospitals and churches and gave them to people to make them feel good. And I think that is a beautiful social mission, and I love to share that because it shows to me, and it shows to other people, that whoever you are, wherever you are, you can do something. How am I going with time? So I wanted to just go through some of the things to help you find your social mission. One of the things that I've discovered, that I've thought about and looked at and researched, is that when we look at our love language, if you know what love languages are, there's 5 different love languages: physical touch, acts of service, words of affirmation, gift giving, and it'll come to me in a minute. Anyway, I found that when we look at those love languages, how we feel love and how we give love, that very much relates to what our social mission is. So for me, I have physical touch, but I also have acts of quality time. That was the one that I missed out, was quality time, and that's mine. And so chocolate and coffee is about quality time. It's sitting with someone and having quality time. As in a lot of the other things that I do, is about that quality time. For other people, it's about gifts, so that could be raising money or collecting gifts for people, such as the books. I haven't asked Melinda what hers is. So acts of service. So some people, so my husband is acts of service. When I spoke to him about social mission, I said, a lot of people will work at earning more money so that they can give more money. And to him, that was like, no, that's a cop-out. You need to be in there doing stuff. So we all have those different things. So nothing is right, nothing is wrong. It's just what's right for us. So I like to, look at our love language. And then we have I encourage people to look at their stories. What is their own legacy? What is their, those things, those people that have driven them and made impact on their life? To look at your values. What's important to you in the world? What do you feel? What are those things at the basis of who you are? The passions, those things that excite you, that get you going. I'm not talking about, your football team, but those things that really you want to make a difference, that you really enjoy doing in life, and your strengths. Now, when I talk about strengths, I'm really careful in saying that sometimes our skills are not necessarily our strength. They're not the things that excite us in life. We want to do the things that excite us. Those strengths that really get us excited, that make us want to get up and do stuff. because some of us have skills in some areas, like, I could sit here and do data entry. I could do it, and some people love it, but it would bore me to tears, and I'd be, so make sure that you're doing things that really excite you and pick you up. Because when you can place all these things together, then you can get excited about what you're doing. Then you can start pulling those together. And then I have a magic question that I add to. Once you've done all that, let's go to this question. If there was just one thing for you to fight for, what would it be? Now, has anyone got anything come to your mind? Some people, it just comes to them like that. It's just instant. Other people really have to stop and think about it, because it's the one thing, just one thing. Now, that really, nothing coming right now. Now, that one really grabs to me, because I was asked that question a couple of years before I started Chocolate and Coffee Day. And at that point, I said it was freedom of spiritual expression. And then I started Chocolate and Coffee Day for religious harmony. But I realize now that it's greater than spiritual expression. It's really about people feeling that they are of worth, that who they are is valued and accepted, and that they have the freedom to express who they are. So I believe that if we can get to that one question, and I've asked everyone that question when I've spoken to them about social mission, that they are very much interrelated into what comes to them. And so they're the kind of things that I find help us to get to our social mission. But really what's important is that right now in this world, there is a lot of great things that can be done. We can look at the world, we can listen to the news, and we can get quite depressed. Or we can look at the good things that people are doing. There is a lot of good in the world. There is a lot we can be doing. And so I like to encourage people to do that, to look at what it is that's calling them, that's calling them from the heart. Because I know this, because there was a time when I fell into a deep depression. I would send my kids off to school, and I would then just go to bed and curl up in a ball, because I couldn't get anything else. I just was so depressed that I couldn't move myself. But it wasn't until I made that effort and got up and started moving and making sure I was eating right, and I started to get involved in community. I started to volunteer my time. When I started to volunteer my time, it took me out of myself and helped me to see something bigger and better in the world. When I was doing that pulled me out of my depression. And I see that, and I've had those conversations with people, that's what happens. So right now, I just feel like it's time for us to look at that deeper calling within us, whether it's in our business or whether it's personal. I'd like people to look at it personally first, and then look at it in a business. And then when you're in a business, not just with other people, not just to do it on your own, go in there and say, we're doing this. That doesn't achieve much. When we work with other people to find what that group calling is, that is so powerful. So if we can do that, we can get into developing something brilliant in the world. Now, and you don't, like I said before, it may not be massive. When I was finishing this book, I had no final chapter. I didn't know how to finish my book. And so I spoke to my mother. Now, at the time, she was 85. And she was quite getting frail. And was getting to the point where she needed a walker. But I asked her, I was just going to read this, but Um, I asked her, "What is it important for people to make a difference?" And her response was, "As long as I don't expect to do it by big strokes, just small steps." I think that's what we need to do. Um, but she told me about what was important to her, and that was to make an effort to stop and talk to people. That when she goes to the shop and sees someone in the street who feels she could use a word, she will stop and chat with them. Now, I've seen this over and over in my mother. So, this was her at 85. She would go to hospital and she would be, as soon as she could get out of bed, she would wander around and talk to other people who were lonely. Now, she's now in a home. When she first moved into the home, she's deteriorating at the moment, but she would spend a lot of time. She would see that other people needed someone to talk to, someone to listen to, someone to, just to make them feel like they had purpose, that there was someone there for her. And so I like to share that. I want people to, sometimes they need to realize that what they do does make a difference every day. And you don't have to be the billionaire. And you can be the little old lady with a walker. So there's wherever you find yourself, there is some difference that you can make. And so I'd like to invite you to grab one of my books. You can grab them from Amazon or any online bookseller, you'll find them. The thought I'd like to leave everyone with is that if you touch one person's life, you change the world. It changes for them. It changes for you. And it ripples out into the world. Because you don't know who that's going to touch. You don't know. And that's why when I talk about legacy in my book, I talk about those stories of where someone has touched my life and that's rippled out. My life, my children's life, to the people that they work with, to the people's lives that I am involved with. It ripples out. And if you can change one person's life, that is an amazing legacy that you have made to the world. Now, if there's anything that anyone wants to share or question about anything, as Aaron says, we impact lives more than we know. We do. We do. And I think that's part of my work, is helping people to recognise that. While I'd love people to work with me to develop a social mission, I'm happy if people recognise that they are making a difference. Because you often talk to people and they're feeling quite down and low in their life. But when you come to it and you can get them to see that they are making a difference and that they can make a difference, it really changes their view, their perspective on themselves, and realise that their life has value and worth. And I think that is the most important thing. And if I can give anyone that sense that their life is of value, I have achieved everything that I want to achieve in life. So I'd love to thank you, Caroline, for this opportunity to get me up early in the morning and get me excited about the day.
Oh my goodness, this was so good. I cannot tell you. I will tell you just a second. I wrote down so many things while you were talking. I show you my page, but I wrote 2 pages. 2 pages. No, really, really. So I want to emphasize what was for me the best thing was, like, when you were talking about create the legacy and you said it at the end. In the beginning, you talked about volunteer day, that we can dedicate 1 day per week or per month, something like that. And then, of course, making a social impact, and also find your social mission. So I could not answer this question you had your first question about what is the one thing. So I have to think about it now, and I have to watch the replay, of course, because I want to reflect and to fill in the where I was not attentive in that moment when I wrote down. Then have to fill in
Yeah.
what was missing. And thank you so much. Now it's time for questions. Maybe Aaron or Cherry Ann, there are questions. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh my goodness. All those ideas now about chocolate and coffee and what and you the three stories you shared, you know.
Yeah. So if you want to know anything more about chocolate and coffee, any of the books that I've written, or how to get in touch with me, anything at all, it's all on andreaputting.com. I've created a page where you can just go to all my links. So chocolate and coffee, social mission revolution, my books, my contact details are all on that page.
Yeah, I think Cherry Ann wanted to add something, and we have the links on the left side. You can click
No,
on
no,
them.
no. I'm fine. I just wanted to say thanks. There was so much information there. I don't even know where to start, but it was inspiring. I thank her for sharing all her experiences. The I forgot the term that she used about the kind of company that they build. For example, Meals on Wheel. Is that what you call it? Share cooking and sharing with for people who are not eating well or the homeless. I think that those ideas are just brilliant, and people who invest their time and energy into bringing that to reality to this dimension is just really blessed, and I'm glad she brought that up.
Thank you. You can always listen to my podcast for more of those stories, or read them in my book.
So great. Thank you so much, Cherry Ann,
No problem.
Thank you.
for
Thank
being
you.
here, talking to us. We have cool Aaron. There he is. Now I see you.
Yeah, it was great talking about communities and just really people getting together without, using their egos or just anything like that's meant to harm each other, but have good intentions with communicating with people. Try to actually sit down and understand each other's perspectives and how we view life. That was very key, like building a community. A community in this world is much needed. A lot of people are feeling lost or feeling like there's no like hope out there in the world for them, and they just really need to be seen and heard. So I like when you mentioned just community and people saying, hey, you don't have to wait for something negative to happen or a big event to unite. We can already be making positive changes and not saying, you know what, okay, this bad happened, something bad happened, now we're going to make the positive changes. But no, we need to already be making those steps today.
Very true.
Well, I
So
have to jump off. I'm sorry. I have to go now, but I will catch. I will try to catch a replay. But I just want to say thank you again and have an amazing day. Great speakers, Caroline. You did an excellent job in your selection, and thank you so much, Andrea. Have a great day, everyone. Take
Thank
care.
you. Thank you for coming.
mm,
Thank you.
wow, amazing. Thank you so much. I think this was a great stage event, stage of inspiration. We are all inspired now for our nights, our afternoons, our days, wherever we are when you watch the replay. Yes, leave a comment, connect to Andrea. She's amazing. Connect to each other. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Caroline.
Oh my goodness.